Welcome to the refresher training for SREB Science Literacy Unit 1, Lesson 6, Synthesizing Knowledge Gained from Text. In this lesson, students are going to be doing a bunch of different activities related to pulling information together and being able to synthesize it in multiple ways. So the first thing that they're going to do is continue reading the Belkin-Mayer book, and they're going to read Belkin-Mayer section 4.3 up to the section on BMI on body fat and health. And they're going to read that individually. And then you're going to break them up into small groups, somewhere between 5 and 7 groups, to learn about one of the disorders. So students will learn about one disorder within their group in a way that they're able to explain it to the rest of the class. So there are 5 topics, but you can make them into 7 or even 8 if you divide them out, depending on how many students you have in the class. So students will read the section. It's a short paragraph on each disorder, but it's chock full of information. They'll gather the information about each disorder to share with the class, things like definition, causes, risks, treatments, and a juicy sentence out of each one that they can share with the class as a way to get started on talking about their topic. So what do teachers need to know? This is very similar to a jigsaw activity where students, take ownership of learning and they have to be able to explain the concepts to others. It's a great way to introduce students to being able to explain things in a way well enough that someone who hasn't done that particular section of reading can understand. They also need to know that they're responsible not only for the one disorder that they learned about, but they need to retain that information that others are sharing as well. So it's a good idea for them to take some notes. It's also important for students to understand that this is a great place to practice their science vocabulary, right? So emphasize the importance of precision of language. It's not that thing. You might be talking about cells or metabolism or whatever. They need to be really organized in how they talk about the concepts, and they need to provide clear explanations that's not just reading from the text. They need to take that text and make it accessible while retaining the scientific language. It's not an easy thing to do, but it's a very short piece to get them started on this. After they've shared all of their disorders with each other and talked about it, they're going to start to learn a method of note-taking and take notes over a lecture. So we have a Cornell note-taking PowerPoint available for you on the SREB website. So review the PowerPoint with the students and have the students prepare several pieces of notebook paper in that split page format that's shown on the PowerPoint so that they're ready to go. This is the first time in the science literacy unit that they've been introduced to Cornell Notes, but Cornell Notes works across all 3 content areas. So if the science is not the first one that you're doing, they probably have seen Cornell Notes before, and you can just review it fairly quickly with the students. So students will take notes over a lecture on insulin using the Cornell method, and the lecture is there for you in the lesson plan. We also will have a PowerPoint for you up on the SREB website that you can use while you give the lecture to students. And if you want some background knowledge, if science is not your background, I have links here to a couple of YouTube videos that are pretty short. The first one is about 5 minutes, and it's on how glucose gets into a cell. And the second one is about the regulation of glucose in the cell and how insulin is a factor. And that one's only about 2 minutes, 35 seconds. That second one is really a science animation. The first one is more of a lecture, but both of them are really background knowledge for you. You can show those videos to your students, but it's really important that they also listen to that science lecture on insulin that is in the notebook, because the exam that they'll take in the next lesson will be tied to this information. So especially those diagrams are really important for them to know. And again, there is that PowerPoint to accompany the lecture that's available on the SREB website. So as you're giving the lecture, pause a couple of times so that students can ask questions and summarize what they've learned so far, so that they take it slowly and they really can understand what each part of the lecture is trying to talk about. So some important ideas. So students need to leave the lecture understanding how insulin works in the body, so the secretion of insulin, insulin and glucose regulation, receptors, glucose metabolism in the body. They also need to know, how does insulin affect the body? So how does it regulate a bunch of different cellular processes? And what is its connection with diabetes, which is something that most students have heard of, and the lecture talks about several different types. After the lecture, so you've paused a couple times during the lecture, then after the lecture, give students time to compare notes with a classmate and to use that margin area to either predict possible test questions, summarize key terms, do something so that they're taking those notes and turning them into a study guide, a way that they can come back and use them later. They can also, after they do that, share those with the classmates to compare the different ways that students went about using those margins. After the lecture, we move to activity 4, which is synthesizing knowledge. And what they will do is work together to think about this particular prompt. Is counting calories enough for a person to maintain health? After reading Belk and Mayer chapters 3 and 4, viewing animations and lectures, reading informal articles, compare the interpretations of the role of calories and argue for the other factors that need to be considered. Be sure to support your position with evidence from the text and the videos. So this is basically taking the information right from the beginning of this unit up until now and preparing for a discussion over that topic. So students will have about 25 minutes to work in their groups to plan out their discussion, and there's a chart for them in the academic notebook that they can cite their sources, talk about exactly what they want to say about each source, maybe pull out a quote that's really important, and then summarize how this information supports their stance. So they need to know that the group does not need to reach a consensus. That's not really part of the activity. In fact, when they have some dissent over the information, when everybody doesn't agree, it leads to a richer discussion of the nuances of the role of calories. There's also some guiding questions in the academic notebook. Questions like, how could a person be overweight but calculate a lower than recommended daily caloric intake? Explain the science behind the saying, you are what you eat. So it's questions like that to get them really thinking about, what is this topic and how does it play out in our lives? They also need to think about the lab results that they got and how what they know about calories and the role of calories can impact what they understand. So that is the rest of this lesson. After they organize their responses, they'll have 25 minutes to hold a discussion in class. And you can structure this in several ways. It could be a debate. It can be a free-form discussion. You could have some groups go first, second, third, etc. But the point is for them to be able to bring out and support their ideas from the information they learned to discuss that particular prompt. So that's it. That is lesson 6 in a nutshell. This lesson, please post them to the SREB Literacy Ready Google group, and I will get on there and answer them. Thanks so much.